Now bear with me, if today's lesson was a letter of the alphabet, it would be a capital Q. We're going to start, and then we're going to go all the way around, and then back to where we started, and then we're going to go a little bit outside the circle, and then we're going to go a little bit inside of the circle, and that's probably all the time we're going to have. But to start, we're just going to read verse number 1. Proverbs 18, verse 1, through desire a man, having separated himself, seeketh and intermeddleth with all wisdom. Okie dokie. Now, you may not see how we're going to make a whole circle out of that one verse, but hey, hang in there. We're going to get a whole circle out of that verse. Okay, in this verse we find, well, before we get into that, reason we only read one verse to start. If you haven't noticed before, the book of Proverbs is very segmented. Now, the first, I can't remember if it's 8 or 10 now, it's an even number. The first 8 or 10 chapters are an entire narrative where Solomon refers to wisdom as a lady that cries on the street. It's a little bit of prose, if you will. Okay, a little bit of, symbolism, metaphorical application. But the first 10 chapters are Solomon trying to get people to understand everyone's need for wisdom. Okay? He also outlines where wisdom comes from. Okay? Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Okay? The fool has said in his heart that there is no God. So, foolish man can't have wisdom because true wisdom comes from God. Yeah, that's the first part of the book of Proverbs. And then he starts getting into what we would actually refer to as the Proverbs, which are very quick snippets that sometimes it's a verse, sometimes it's half a verse, sometimes it could be more than one verse, but oftentimes one verse is one proverb, and then the next verse has to do with a different topic. Okay, they're not like other parts of the Bible where an entire chapter deals with one subject, or part of a chapter deals with one subject. Okay, in chapter number 18, we start off talking about wisdom and a man that desires it. Okay, then at the end we get the very popular verse, a man that hath friends must show himself friendly, and there is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother. Okay, between those two verses, and the 22 other ones in between them, okay, he covers a lot of ground, a lot of different topics. Okay, now can you relate them together? Well, you give me a challenge, I can link about anything together, because just like today's lesson, the Bible, very cyclical. Okay? Things go in circles because the one who wrote it also has circles. He is the beginning and the end. So wherever you go, you're going to find him. You're going to be working in a circle. Okay? Well, why did Jesus come? Because John 3:16, for God so loved the world. Well, why did God love the world? Because God is love. Well, why is God love? Because he's holy. Why is he holy? Because he's God. Now we're all the way back to the beginning again. We could have put more steps in there, but everything's cyclical. But a few of these verses we're going to look at today, not saying that the other ones don't apply, but 2 of them strongly go together. That's why we're not going to read in between them, because I don't want to be confusing everybody with topics that aren't related. Okay? So anyway, back to verse number 1. Now it says, through desire, a man, having separated himself, seeketh and intermeddleth with all wisdom. Now, the first requirement to have any answer. Now, I can give you any answer. That's not what we're talking about. Finding the answer for any question that you have. Now, is it an easy process? Well, it's an easy formula. The answer is easy to say. It's a lot harder to do. So what's the first step in finding the true answer to any question that someone has? Well, first it says, through desire. The focal point of a Christian spirituality is their desire. Their spirituality will never get farther than their desire. Your desire is where you focus. That's why it's your focal point. Anybody ever heard the phrase, shoot for the moon? And then some moron said, if you miss, you'll end up among the stars. Well, eventually you're going to run out of food and oxygen, you're going to die. So if you're shooting for the moon, hit the moon. Otherwise, we're not going to see you again. Okay, but even if you are shooting for the moon and you end up among the stars, you're still going to be turning around looking back at the moon. And then once you get, so far away, you're only going to be able to see it for about 14 days because then it's going to spin around and you're going to see the dark side of the moon. Anyway, again, I can make anything link together. But the point is, it's desire, that's what you're looking at. Even if you attain that goal or that desire, if you don't find another one, you're not going to progress. Desire, if you get the text messages on Sunday morning, this morning, from our pastor, in the first couple of words, in the age or in this world of apathy that we live in. What's apathy? No desire. Nothing that propels us, and then being content with being stationary. In all honesty, apathy is, it doesn't matter what happens around you or happens to you, as long as you don't have to change anything, you're happy with it. You're willing to go through loss, you're willing to suffer certain things, as long as you don't have to change your routine, you're okay with it. Well, that happened to so-and-so? I'm sorry to hear that, but it didn't affect me and I don't have to do anything different. So I can handle it. That's okay with me. But what does God look for? Looks for desire. It's one thing to be content with the things that God, godliness with contentment, it's a great gain. Okay, in fact, I think I preached one time on we're not to be content in everything. We're supposed to be content with what God has given us, and we're supposed to seek first the kingdom of heaven. But apathy is a different type of contentment. I can be content with what God has given me, but still desire for God to do things, and that be in perfect alignment with the will of God. Because it's His will that none should perish, but that all should come to repentance. It's His will that all prodigals return. It's His will that everyone that may be in the fold or in the flock by the shepherd get closer to the shepherd. All of those require desire. Without desire, we're no better than robots. Input in, input out. We do what it is that we are conditioned or programmed, or in our minds what we are expected to do, without desire. You want to find out what a world looks like with no desire? Go read the book 1984. Okay, I don't like all of it, but that's a world where everything has been stripped away except what the government wants you to do, and you're content in fulfilling that expectation and wanting nothing else. It's a world full of apathy. Now, why out of two words, through desire? Why is that such a critical thing? Because one, that's what you're shooting for. That's your goal. If you truly desire something, that's all that you will focus on, or that will receive the majority of your focus, or the most of your focus. Maybe not 51%, but it'll get a plurality of it. You'll give more attention to that than anything else. If you desire something, not only is it your goal, not only is that what you're going to invest in with your time, with your attention, but your goal is also what motivates you. Based on what you desire, that can propel you through points A and B. There may be a lot of footnotes along the way, but if you really want to get to B bad enough, doesn't matter what's put in your way, your desire will overcome the obstacles that are put in your way. So when Solomon says that through desire, although a very short word, in fact it's the shorter of the two words, but it's not the shortest word of the next two parts, because the next two words are shorter than desire. But desire we hear a lot about, but most of the time we hear about it in a carnal way or in a worldly way. That we want something. A desire is not a want. A desire is not a pipe dream. I have, sarcastically used the, allegorical example of me getting an Aston Martin. I'm never going to get an Aston Martin. Because even if I could, I know that it wouldn't be good for me. I'd go with something else. I'd save some money. So I know that's a pipe dream. That's not going to happen. Okay, so, you could throw those into the worlds of, fantasies. Things that people dream up just to entertain the idea because bored on a car ride one day. Or in my case, saw a James Bond movie and thought, man, that's a cool car. I don't need the ejector seat or anything else, but that's a cool car. And guess what? Batman drove one in one of the newest Batman movies. Boom. Batman and James Bond. But the point is, that's not a desire. A desire is something that you want so badly, you're willing to give up other things in order to have it. That means more to you than what you have right now. Not out of a lustful sense, right? Not coveting something that your neighbor has, that because they have it, I want it. No, that is so valuable to me that in comparison, nothing else matters. Now, obviously for some people, not naming names, Brother Lawrence, UK basketball is very important. I'm kidding. But not really. He's got a UK Looney Tunes picture hanging up in his office. And I stole it for a month and he didn't even notice. Anyway, I hid it in our office. In plain sight, it was just up on top of the book. He didn't know. I was planning on taking all of my Star Wars stuff and started hiding it in spots around his office to see how long it would take him to notice. But anyway, your desires sometimes can be temporary things, can be simple things, can be ignorant things. Sometimes they can be carnal things. But what makes it a desire is not that thought that, well, that'd be nice to have. It's not the thought that, well, maybe one day I could get around to that. It's that desire deep down in your heart. Because what's in your heart works its way into your thoughts. Once you start dwelling on those thoughts, or once those thoughts start growing, it'll work its way out your mouth. And then eventually, if you think about it enough, if you talk about it enough with other people, you will pursue it. Why is that? Well, it's, for the same reason that in the Old Testament and the New Testament, you'll find that the one great commandment, as Jesus said, is thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind, sometimes thy body. But what's it talking about when he means heart? Desire, the seat of emotion. It's so valuable to you that in comparison, nothing else really matters. If you desire something, it's worth, in your mind, skipping a meal. Because if it came down to one meal or this is far more valuable than one meal. Or if it came down to a church service or your desire, your flesh tells you it's just one church service. You can have your cake and eat it too. Right? In comparison, nothing else seems as valuable. But notice what Solomon's talking about desiring here. Okay? Through desire, a man, skip what's in between the commas for a second, seeketh and intermeddleth with all wisdom. So in order to find any answer, the right answer, through desire, a man seeketh and intermeddleth with all wisdom. Now, we've covered the seek part. If you desire it and it's more valuable than anything, that's what you'll seek. If you, right now, because it's liable to change at any moment, but right now, if you had a deed to a gold mine, and you had a deed to a silver mine, and on the piece of paper it said that, the mines have about the same amount when it comes to weight in each mine, you'd be an idiot if you didn't take the deed for the gold mine. Why? Because the gold is more valuable on the stock exchange right now, which means the more you pull of that out of the ground, the more money you're making. Why? Because it's more desirable from a financial standpoint? If you had those two options, you would seek the gold. If you knew anything about it. Now, if there's a whole lot more silver, I mean a whole lot more silver than there is gold, that may be more desirable. But whatever your desire is, that's what you will seek. Notice, this isn't conditional. Through desire, a man seeketh. Seeketh, by the way, for all those that think that the Bible is too hard to read, anytime you see an "ith" at the end of it, okay, that is a present/past point of view. Meaning that they are either currently doing it and have done it in the past, or they've done it in the past. So what does seeketh mean? It means that you've been seeking. You sought. Or if you desire, you will. There's no condition. It's not if you have the time. No, if you desire, truly desire, not our modern day version of the word desire, but biblically desire, you will seek. Because you're going to want to find whatever you desire. And if you want to find it, it's not just gazing around. Seeking. Meaning, you're going to find where it's at. You may not get there on the first day, but you're going to dig up something along the way. You're going to find some tracks. You're going to find some antler rubbings on a tree. You're going to pick up a piece of fur. Okay? You're going to notice something that that tells me I need to go here. You're seeking. It's a continual. Somebody that truly desires does not seek and then quit. They seek until they can seek no more and they have found what they have sought. Because that's what true desire is. But it doesn't just say seek, because if you desire, you will seek. But Solomon says that if you do it the right way, after you've seek, you will find, because it says you will intermeddleth. Or, another version of the word is intermingle with. Okay, to meddle in something means to insert yourself into something. Okay, you are now in it. But if you look at intermingle, that also means that you're taking one thing and putting it in another, but then you're stirring it up too. You can stir oil and water and they'll be intermingled for a while, but then they'll separate if there's no movement. Okay, now when we get to our verse down here in a little bit, this is going to be after we complete the circle. I want you to keep that illustration of liquid in mind. Okay? Keep that in mind. But it will mean that you and whatever you desire, in this case wisdom, will become, in essence, one and the same. You'll be able to tell them apart, but you're in it. You weren't satisfied with being on the shore. You desired it. You wanted it. Now you're in it. It's all around. It surrounds you. If you want to look at it like Teflon, it coats you. Okay? The Bible says that we're supposed to be adorned like Christ. Think of it as putting on the raiment of God's wisdom. Being robed not only in His righteousness, but also in His knowledge and His wisdom. Okay, so that's what Solomon, he's saying. Remember, first 8-10 chapters. He's saying this is how important wisdom is. And he's saying, through desire, a man will seek, but he will also intermeddleth, or intermeddle with wisdom. Those are promises. But what's the kicker? That part in between the commas. Through desire, a man, having separated himself. Here's the distinction. You can seek wisdom, and the world will give you a lot of things with so-called wisdom. In order to attain the world's wisdom, all you got to do is walk out that door and ask somebody for their opinion, because everybody thinks they're right, and nobody thinks they're wrong, which is why everybody gets offended and thinks that their opinion matters. It doesn't, and they're not right. But because of that, that's why we got a whole bunch of millennials ruining, politics right now. But anyway, and a lot of older ones that just want to act like children anyway. But not going to get on that. That's not part of the circle today. Got to backtrack. Got to keep it in the circle. And that's not the part that went a little bit outside of the circle. That's still to come. But having separated himself. To get the world's wisdom, you must include yourself, not separate yourself. Throughout the Bible, never do you find God telling his people to include themselves in the world. What did he tell Abraham? To sojourn in Egypt. That's temporary. Isaac had the same commandment. They stayed there while there was a famine in their land. God sent them elsewhere to provide for them. What did he tell Moses? He said, you'll lead my people to the promised land. And that was always the goal. But the 40 years in the wilderness was not God. That was the children of Israel. God had no intentions of doing that. But because of the actions of the children of Israel, they delayed God's actions. That time in the wilderness, he did not lead them out of Egypt as they feared to die in the wilderness. He was going to take them straight through the wilderness and into the land that he had promised them. But even through all that time, God saw it as temporary. It was always, this generation shall pass away, and then the promised land. What are we told in the New Testament? That we are supposed to be sober and vigilant as good soldiers of Jesus Christ, but we're also supposed to be separated from the world. How many times? I mean, you can go back to Nehemiah's day. Because the law had been forgotten for so long, they didn't know about the commandments to not take a wife that wasn't of their people, because they worship strange gods. And if your son married a daughter, then they would lead them away to worship strange gods. Why? Desire. The son desired the wife more than he desired Jehovah. You don't believe me? I can give you a whole bunch of examples. Solomon, in his old age, being one of them. So even wisdom doesn't safeguard us from the mechanism of desire. It can blind us to all else because that's all that we're focused on. So when he's talking about being separated, he's saying, don't go to the world. Separate yourself from their knowledge. They're ever learning, yet unable to come to the knowledge of truth. They have their wisdom, but it's not wisdom. What is theirs? Sounding brass and tinkling cymbals. It's a bunch of movements that they know aren't going to work. That's why they're already working on the next one while they're selling you this one. Because they know it's not going to last long enough. That's not wisdom. What is that? That's a placebo. They'll give you an answer, but it's not going to be the answer. So what does the separation mean? Well, first it means separating from the world. But then second, it also means separating to God. It's one thing to be not a part of the world, but you can be in no man's land. You can be unsatisfied by the world, but you can also be undesirous of the things of God. Some people might call that backslidden, where their desire has waned for the things of God. They're not out in the world living in wicked sin, but they're just not all in for the things of God. You can be in no man's land. And then you can be separated unto God. That's consecrated. That's sanctified. As Paul wrote, that's possessing your vessel in honor. Lord, this is what you've given me, and I've maintained it in honor, and now I'm ready to use it only for you. I've kept it clean. I've done the maintenance that we've talked. You've done most of the work. I've done what you've told me. And Lord, if you need me, I'm right here. That's separated. But then it's also Not just talking about separated from the world and separated to God. It's talking about being separated from distractions. You could be on fire, 100% in the will of God. Your desire can be on the things of God. And especially in those situations, it's going to be very tempting for the devil to not throw distractions up in your life. Even if the devil doesn't throw up distractions, the world in general, daily life, will cause distractions. And if you desire the things of God and you truly want it, in order to seek it properly, in order to intermeddle with it, in order to find the answer, because you can't seek and not find, but Christ said, ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. What was the condition? That we don't ask amiss, that we ask according to the will of God, not so that we can consume upon our own lust. Well, how do we make sure that our pursuit, that our seeking is effectual or is effective? By removing anything that may deter us from the path. Now, this is not, certainly, okay, can't claim to be Christian and then live like the world. Okay? That's true, but that's not the separation that we're talking about. Separation that we're talking about here is not necessarily on a day-to-day basis, but it is when you have an inquiry for God, or you have a question for God, or you have something in your life that you need an answer from God, and you diligently desire the answer, because, first off, fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. You got to fear God. This is talking about people that are saved. Okay, this is talking about people that understand that daily we ought to read our Bibles. Daily we ought to converse with God without ceasing. Daily we ought to go to Him in prayer, not just with prayer requests, but also in thanksgiving and supplication and intercession. Okay, these are people that understand all that, but they also know when they need an answer. This isn't something, well, Lord, would you allow me to do this at some point? There are a lot of people that have desires for things that they would like to see God do, but God hasn't given them the green light yet. And because God is worth more to them and more valuable than their desire, they're okay with God saying, not now. This is something that I need an answer. Lord, without you, I can't be 100% sure that this is the right answer. I need to know, because I don't want to do anything that would come in between me and you. Not only do you hold tomorrow in your hand, you know tomorrow and every tomorrow after that. So even though I may make what seems to be the right decision, I want your answer. So this is separating from all the distractions that could possibly deter us. Some things may seem immediate because the devil immediately wants to get your attention. Not because there's an actual problem that requires your immediate attention. Or it's that stray thought that you don't know where it came from because it wasn't anywhere on your radar. But as soon as you get down on your knees to pray, it's there. Why does that happen? A distraction. This is being separated and solely given to finding an answer from God. If you desire and if you solely separate yourself to finding or receiving the answer, if you're that diligent in your seeking, then you'll intermeddle it with all wisdom. Separating from your flesh. Stomach rumble may happen. You know what, I'm a little hungry. I should probably go get some food now so that I can. If you stop, you're liable to never return to it. Because then something else, and something else, and something else, and I can do that later. It's saying separating, no, this is God's time. Doesn't matter what happens. Phone on silent. Doesn't matter who calls. Doesn't matter what happened. Doesn't matter, because your desire is the answer from God. That's all that you're seeking. And you may do all that you can. You may read, and you may continually read. But I mean, it's not God's will for you to quit your job just so that you can pray for an answer from God until it comes. Right? That's praying without ceasing. That you're liable to ask today and then tomorrow receive, and whatever, daily reading you do, or whatever devotion, whatever study that you're doing right now, it may be waiting on you. And by faith you've given it over to God, but that's truly still your desire. That's why you're going to get back in the book, because you're looking for the answer. That's why when the preacher's preaching, you're going to be listening to every subpoint. Why? Because that may be the one that has the answer for me. Because if that's your desire, that's what you're focused on. Now see, here's the thing. You can be solely focused on something, and if you're separated unto it, you can do other things without losing focus. Not like me without my medicine, where it's ADD and there's one track mind, but you've got about 800 cylinders hitting at the same speed, and bang, no. Right? Ooh, piece of candy. Right? Not that. This is in the back of my mind, which really means it's in the forefront of your mind, because if you're always thinking about it, it's up front, it's not in the back. But you're able to accomplish what you need to accomplish, yet you're still focused on your desire. That's still your driving factor. That's the difference between a thought in your head and a desire in your heart. Okay? Now here's where we've made the circle. Now we're going to do the cue. Remember that illustration with the liquid? Look at verse number 4. The words of a man's mouth are as deep waters, and the wellspring of wisdom as a flowing brook. Now what's it saying? It's talking about those two different types of wisdom that we were talking about before, the world's wisdom and God's wisdom. A man's words, deep water. Wisdom, that comes from God. Brook. Little water. What's Solomon saying here? Man's going to give you a whole lot of words. There's a lot of water there. Why? Because they don't want you to see what's on the bottom. With all the words, they're hiding what's truly their answer. They don't want you to find the answer. They want you to be in the water. You go out deep enough, even if it is a crystal clear blue ocean out in the middle of the Caribbean, you go deep enough, that blue gets darker and darker, and then that's all you see. No more rocks, no more sand that you can make out from the top. What is it? It's a deeper blue. Deepest part of the ocean, Marianas Trench, over by the Philippines, 7 miles deep. Man's words go a whole lot deeper than that, because they don't even want to risk you sending something down there. Why? All their wisdom, or so-called wisdom, is just meant to keep you from finding out what's really at the bottom. But what about God's wisdom? God's not hiding anything. It's a brook. You can see to the bottom of a brook. But what else about this brook? It's a flowing brook. Meaning these waters don't ever get stagnant. Now, if there's a good rainstorm, not like the little misting that we had out here this morning on the way to church, a good rainstorm, the waters in a brook may get muddy. Why is that? Because it's pulling all the mud off of the hills that drain down into the brook. But it's a flowing brook, which means even though you may not be able to see the bottom of it right now, you know that wisdom's at the bottom of this brook. And because it's a flowing brook, this cloudiness will pass. Sometimes, as the psalmist, I looked in front of me, I looked to left, looked to, where's God at? I can't find him. Daniel prayed for 21 days, and no answer came. He was fasting. In fact, he looked in such bad shape that other people were wondering, Daniel, what are you? You're killing yourself. But Daniel desired the answer from God more than he desired the food, more than he desired the rest, more than he desired to do even the duties that were given to him by his king or by his ruler. Because the king of heaven meant more to him. Even though you may not be able to see it right now, if you seek, part of seeking may be waiting. You don't go hunting and just walk out, well, unless you're Brother Bob's son, Clint. But the only reason that happened, he did walk out on the back porch and find a deer. The only reason that happened is because Brother Eric had been baiting this deer for so long. And then his loving brother-in-law went over to his mom and dad's house and then walked out on the back porch and bang! That's the only time I've ever heard of that happen. But that's because Brother Eric was cheating by baiting. But it was on their land, so technically it wasn't cheating. Okay? But you don't just walk out and find the game that you're looking for. You got to either put up a blind or put up a tree stand, or if you want to do it old school, you go tracking. Right? And then they even have what's called micro tracking. You're looking for twigs that are bent on little tiny bushes because they're not strong enough to snap. You're looking for ones that are bent, right, to see that something walked past this way. Okay, now you're getting real hyper technical. But you got to put in the work. You got to seek. But if you put up a blind, you're going to have to wait because you can't move the blind. But I'm here at the brook. I've found the destination. Right? X marks the spot. But even once you get there, you might have to do some digging. You might have to do some waiting. Solomon's letting us know the world may try and throw up as much dirt as they can into that water, but it's shallow. If God tells you to, and you reach down into that water, you're going to be able to find the rock at the bottom. Because it's a brook. It's not that deep. You can't reach into what the world has for you and pull out. Because if you do, you're going to fall in. And if you don't know how to swim, it's going to drag you all the way to the bottom. But if it's a brook, even if the water's muddy, just like David pulled those five smooth stones out of a brook, we can find the answer if we are led by God, even though we may not be able to see. Sometimes it's plain in black and white. Other times it's a reach of faith where, Lord, I'm here, I've done all that I can, and I'm waiting on you to respond. Now, the world would say, that's nuts. Our water's deep, it's got a lot of fish. I'm not looking for fish, I'm looking for wisdom. But we've got answers. No, I don't want your answer, I want the answer. Now, you don't desire those kind of answers if you don't see the value in God's Word, if you don't see the value in communication with God, if you don't see the value in having God as the most valuable desire of your life. You're not going to look for His answer if you're not looking for Him. You're not going to care or desire of having the answer of God. Why do you desire God's wisdom? So that you can do what God wants you to do and be in the perfect will of God. So that even though I know where I'm supposed to be and I know what I'm doing, what I'm supposed to do, I need help in doing it the way that God wants me to do it. Because the arm of flesh will fail me. And if I think that I have the answer, or I can go and find the answer, as a man thinketh, so is he. If I think I have the answer, then eventually I'll start acting like I know the answer. And then I'm going to get myself in a whole heap of trouble. It's better to just stay by the brook. The world may look at me and say, well, he's not getting much. I'm getting the desire of my heart. Everybody ever heard beauty's in the eye of the beholder? I also disagree with that statement, because I would make the argument that technically beauty is a social construct, thereby meaning that it has definitions. But what that phrase means is, it doesn't matter if you think that there's beauty there. Somebody sees it, and because they saw it, that's the most valuable thing to them. Okay, some of these Jackson Pollock artwork looked like somebody gave Riker a can of paint and he just threw it everywhere. But that stuff sells for millions of dollars. Andy Warhol took a Campbell's can and did it in 4 different colors, and they called it art. I don't get it. But beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Somebody thought it was valuable. He took Brillo pad boxes and just remade a box. Painted it to look the exact same. Now they sell for millions in museums. I saw something on Netflix. There's a little yellow one that was, a special kind, and if you can find that one, that's worth even more money. They see some beauty in it. Now, why does that beauty compel them to see or to keep something or to go after something that some other person may say, well, that's crazy? Because the beauty that they see is the potential to fulfill their desire. The beauty of God is that He can fulfill all the needs, all the wants, all the desires of our life. But the key is, through desire, a man will seek and will intermeddle with God if we separate ourselves to the one that has all the answers.